If you look back at the stretch of games for the Montreal Canadiens, you can obviously see there are more wins than losses. And a lot of guys have looked good. What if you don't trade a few guys? Arturi Lehkonen, maybe you keep him. Maybe a Brett Kulak you don't need to offload. Maybe even a Ben Sherratt. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I'll throw that question out to our panelists on this week's edition of Hockey Inside Out. I'm Julian McKenzie, alongside the usual suspects on Hockey Inside Out. Stuart Cowan of the Montreal Gazette is here. Jessica Rusnak of CBC Daybreak is here. And Stanley Cup champion Rick Green as well. We got to look back at some of these games and how the Canadiens have played over the last little while, and some of the players who have stepped up in this last little while. And none brighter, possibly. I mean, you can make the argument for Cole Caulfield, but Nick Suzuki has been on one over the last how many games? Playing on that top line with Caulfield and Josh Anderson, he's just looked really good. He's looked really good under Martin St. Louis. On his way to career best numbers in his third year in the league with the Montreal Canadiens. An absolute stud at center for this team. I'm going to start with Rick, with Nick Suzuki. What has impressed you the most since Martin St. Louis has taken over as head coach of this team with regards to this player?
Well, I don't know what Martin has said to Nick, but he obviously touched some nerves, because this kid right now is playing the best that I think a lot of us have never seen him play. He's energized, he's competing hard, he's skating well. I don't know if he's lost weight or whether he's just in better shape because he's playing over 20 minutes a game. And, he's contributing big time on the power play. He's making that thing go. So he's a real serious threat there. And obviously you can't deny the fact that his wingers are helping him out in his performance also. But wow, what a change in his overall play in all areas. And you're seeing the results with 40 points to date. And he just keeps getting better. And it's really nice to see this kid grab a hold of the opportunity that he's been given by Martin and, taking full advantage, and the results are happening. And I think, moving forward, we're going to see nothing but, bigger and better things, in the future for him.
He's that difference maker that you look for in a game, especially, when you're down, you need a goal or you need someone to set someone up. He's that difference maker. He's that player that you can rely on, that you say, okay, yes, Nick Suzuki is going to do something or create some kind of energy with this team. He's got 10 points in the last 5 games. He's constantly seeing his name on the score sheet. And, it's fantastic for this young prospect. Came over with that Max Pacioretty trade. And I always remember with Marc Bergevin at that point, Nick Suzuki was not someone that many people were familiar with. And it was like, this is the reason why we made this trade. This was the player we wanted to go and get. And he's starting to, really come into his own and be that player that the Canadiens saw had all this potential a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean, Marc Bergevin has taken a lot of heat for things that he did or didn't do in the past, but what a trade that was after painting himself into a corner with Pacioretty to pull off the deal that he did. I think, though, with Nick Suzuki, is what we've seen from a lot of the players is they're just having fun playing now with the way Marty St. Louis allows them to play. As he said, he doesn't believe in systems. He believes in concepts, and he wants guys to read and react. And Dominic Ducharme spoke often about just how high Nick Suzuki's hockey IQ was and just how smart of a player he is. And now he's being allowed to use his hockey brain and make decisions and read plays rather than being confined to the system that Dominic Ducharme had in place, which seems to have been so strict. He's gaining more confidence. He's being more consistent, and he's having fun. And I think you can say that for a lot of the guys. They look like they're having fun playing hockey. They go into Edmonton, and I'm thinking, the Canes have had success against Edmonton in the past. A big reason for that was Philip Danault, who was able to shut down McDavid. Without Danault, I figured, this might not be good. But Suzuki's just a 200-foot player. He's always been that 200-foot player, but he's playing with much more confidence. He's getting better on faceoffs, which is something that's really going to be key moving forward as a number one center. And with those line mates he has with Josh Anderson and Cole Caulfield, what a perfect line. I mean, you get the shooter, the playmaker, and the big winger who drives to the net. It's a really good line, and for that reason, I can't imagine them trading Josh Anderson before the trade deadline. I mean, I think that's a line you can build this team around moving forward, and Nick Suzuki's the centerpiece of that.
So with regards to Nick Suzuki, you said number one center because he's looked really good and he's had increased responsibility. You're right; he's looked better at faceoffs this season. are you comfortable today if the Canadiens go into next season and they say, all right, Nick Suzuki, you got this. You're the #1 center for the future. You don't need some other center to insulate him. You don't need anybody else. Are you comfortable right now with Nick Suzuki for good as the team's #1 center with how he's playing right now?
Well, it looks that way.
On the spot.
It's hard to get #1 centers. They don't grow on trees. So it looks that way. Unless, Patrice Bergeron, does he want to come here and join Kent Hughes? No, if he does, there's your #1 center with Nick Suzuki as #2, and that would be a pretty nice setup. I don't know if that's going to be the case. Bergeron is a free agent. I don't know if he'd want to come to Montreal. He seems to me like he's probably going to be a lifetime Bruin, but there is that Kent Hughes connection there, and it's something that's intriguing. But apart from that, I think so. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why he was given that 8-year contract. They're going to, as Marc Bergevin gave it to him, but they're planning to build this team around him, and I think he's probably going to be their future captain also. I don't know if he's ready for it right away for next season, but I think within the next 2-3 years, he's going to be the captain of this team also.
Okay. Jess, Rick, any opinions here?
I was just going to say, I mean, bottom line is he's earning it, and, he's making things happen, and he's deserving of everything that he's getting because he's getting results, and he's taking advantage of every opportunity he can to show that he's the real deal. And if you want to peg him in as the first line center, he's definitely playing like one. And here's a young kid that just really has found his game and moving the situation forward. He's going to continue to get better.
And he's not a huge guy either. He's maybe 5'10". But he's solid, he's like a running back, so that's what I think is really great with Nick Suzuki is he's able to hold on to the puck because of his muscle. Doesn't necessarily have the height, but he was able to make up for it with that way. And it doesn't really slow him down either. So yeah, I think that he can be the #1 center of the Montreal Canadiens. Hard to find. And let's just hope he continues to improve. Young guy, has a lot of potential still and a lot of room to grow.
Yeah, he's bigger than people think. I mean, he's 200 pounds. Most of his weight, or a lot of his weight, is in his waist down, like so many of today's modern day hockey players. Sidney Crosby, Brendan Gallagher, guys like that. It's the strength is in the lower body.
I know exactly why Jess was laughing.
Knew that was a joke waiting to happen.
That was right there. You laid it all out, Stu. Anyway, go ahead.
No, it's just it's the lower body strength. You look at the way he battles in the corners and the way he can fight guys off, similar to Brendan Gallagher. Sidney Crosby is the same type of guy. It's lower body strength that makes them effective, and they're bigger and stronger than they might look on the ice.
Okay, I'll stop being a child for a moment and I'll move on to the next question. So aside from Suzuki looking good and obviously his line mates Cole Caulfield and Josh Anderson looking good, who else do you think has looked really good since Martin St. Louis took over as interim head coach? You can mention someone. It cannot be from that top line.
I'm going to go with Samuel Montembeault, even though, it's a goaltender and they have a goaltending coach that takes care of him. And he was injured. He had a wrist injury and he's doing better now. But I think it's because of the overall play in front of him with the team, that before Martin St. Louis took over as head coach, that Samuel Montembeault or whoever was in goal that night was really left out there to dry. And Martin St. Louis has corrected that. And I think also brought in that, team spirit, that having each other's back. And I think we can all go back to that game at the Bell Center against Edmonton when he was run and everyone just kind of stood there and didn't do anything to send a message to say, you can't do this to our goaltender. And I think that mentality has completely changed with the players buying in, that they want to be there for each other, have each other's backs. And I think that has been a huge improvement too, with the way that Samuel Montembeault has been able to play over the last few games. Yeah,
Brett Kulak's looked really good. I've always thought Brett Kulak was an underrated defenseman. He's played really well since Martin St. Louis took over. He spoke after the game the other night and he was asked about it. And he said, I was talking before with Nick Suzuki, same thing. I'm just reading and reacting. I'm just playing. And he's another smart guy, high hockey IQ, making the right decisions. He's a really strong skater. He can move the puck. He can pass the puck. And Kulak himself, I've spoken with him in the past, and he said one of the problems with him is if he makes a couple of mistakes early in the game, it's hard for him to get over it, and it sort of snowballs, and he sort of loses his confidence. But I think a lot of these guys are now just playing without the fear of making a mistake. And I think that's huge. I mean, Rick will be able to speak about this better than me as a former player in that, but he's playing defense is so tough in the NHL as it is. If you're on the ice worried about making a mistake every time, and if I do make a mistake, I'm going to be benched or I'm going to be a healthy scratch, or I think it makes it even more difficult. And Marty St. Louis has said, I want my players to be able to make reads, and I'd rather they make a bad read and make a mistake than be afraid to make a read at all. And I think that's huge for not the Kulak. I think the whole team, they're playing without a fear of making mistakes. And this goes back before Dominic Ducharme. There's a long history with the Canadiens of guys not being afraid to being afraid to make a mistake and worrying that if I make a mistake, I'm going to sit out. And for Brett Kulak, whose confidence can sometimes be a little shaky if he starts making a couple of mistakes, now he's just playing with that freedom, making decisions. And he knows if he makes the wrong decision, he's going to go back to the bench and the coach is going to say, okay, don't worry about it. No, I want you to keep making decisions and making reads and plays. So he's really impressed me.
I mean, it's a long list of the team that, have improved immensely since Martin has taken over, aside from Stu's friend Armia, who's still on the game. But listen, Lehkonen, he was always controversial as far as, the guy doesn't really finish. He doesn't do this. He's second on the team in points. You got to give him full marks. Romanov, who struggled the start of the year, he was like going, oh, what's happening with this kid? This kid's grabbed a hold of it and figured out how to play at the NHL level. It's been solid and real good, other than, a couple, bumps in the road here and there. Nothing but good stuff happening from him. Dauphin, another classic example of a hard-working, honest player that knows his role and steps in there and takes full advantage of every opportunity. And you got to give this guy credit for, doing what he does, which is trying to make the hockey club and be a steady, competitive, hardworking guy is what they need. And, Jess mentioned Montembeault. You got to give him his marks, because we were scratching our head going, oh boy, here we go again. And this kid has found a way to rally and improve in such a way that he gives a team a chance to win each and every night. So a lot of guys have improved under Martin St. Louis. Hats off to, all of them for grabbing a hold of what Martin is trying to do. And they're enjoying playing for him, and the results are happening. So a much happier dressing room. And, there's nothing better as you get down to the final stretch and having some fun and winning some hockey games and playing well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to pick on Yoel Armia, but you're right. He's the only guy I think that hasn't looked better since Martin St. Louis took in. And I'm looking forward to seeing when Jonathan Drouin comes back, what kind of a impact that Martin St. Louis might have on him as a player. He's a creative guy who, maybe give him the freedom to be more creative and not afraid of making mistakes like we were talking about earlier. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of impact he has on Jonathan Drouin. I mean, we've seen Jonathan Drouin get in a heated exchange with Dominic Ducharme at a practice not long before the coaching change was made. So yeah, I mean, everybody in the team, as I said, has looked better. Yoel Armia is sort of the question mark. I don't know what it takes to get that guy motivated, but it really isn't remarkable when you look at the turnaround this team under Marty St. Louis. It's just incredible.
And you have to think that when they did make the coaching change with Claude Julien to Dominic Ducharme last February, I think they were kind of hoping that this was going to be the effect that they would have. Because remember before they talked about him being like Dominic Ducharme, a new age coach. He has tons of experience coaching kids and juniors, so he knows how to communicate with the youth these days. And he just wasn't able to push those buttons and get those players to excel. And at the same time, he was, pissing off the veteran players as well. But Martin St. Louis is doing exactly what they were looking for, bringing everyone together. If you're a young player, kind of in the middle of your career, or a veteran, he's getting them all going. The message is going through everyone. And I think that's just great that he's been able to find that way so quickly.
Yeah, and Ducharme just seems so stubborn with his system and wouldn't change it or overhaul it. And, I remember at one point he was saying, well, it's basically the same system he used with Team Canada at the World Juniors when they won the gold medal. But he sort of reminds me, there's been a lot of college basketball coaches or football coaches that have gone to the pros and haven't done well. And it's a similar thing, I think, because in junior or college, kids will do anything. They'll do whatever you tell them to do. The coach holds all the power in junior hockey and college sports because kids want to get to the next level. At the pro level, the players hold all the power. And if they're not buying what you're selling and you're not willing to change it, you're going to get fired. And I think that's what happened. As I said, we've seen it with some pretty good college football coaches and basketball coaches, and now we've seen it with Dominic Ducharme. The players hold the power in the NHL. You guys are long-term contracts. It's easier to fire one coach than to fire 20 players. And I don't think Dominic Ducharme ever figured that out, that you got to get the players to want to play for you. And if they're not buying what you're selling, you got to start selling a different product.
And as a result, not only are we seeing some of those younger players play well, but veterans like a Jeff Petry, who I don't know if we singled out at all, who has looked arguably the best of all the defensemen on this team. He's been great offensively. There's a point in the early point of the year where he couldn't even get the puck out of his own zone or make a pass, and now he's turned into the dynamic offensive defenseman that Canadiens fans have expected him to be. There are a long list of players who have done very well under Martin St. Louis. So with the Canadiens now, we are about less than 2 weeks away from the trade deadline. Guys like Ben Chiarot could be made available, but not unless Kent Hughes gets that first round pick plus that he so covets, and also other pieces like Brett Kulak, maybe a guy like Arturi Lehkonen moves as well. There are a number of pieces who could be gone from the Montreal Canadiens after March 21st, but does it have to be that way if the team is playing as well as it has? Look, I think for a guy like Ben Chiarot should probably still be moved, but I'm also really curious about what you all think about the way the team is composed of right now and whether or not Kent Hughes really has to make some of those moves.
Yeah, well, I mean, Hughes has come out and said he's going to trade Ben Chiarot. I mean, I don't think there's anything about that. The question with Chiarot is he's unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. Is there any way that they trade Chiarot and then re-sign him in the offseason and bring him back? Would he want to come back to Montreal? Would the team that's trading for him only want him as a rental, or are they going to make the trade based on him signing an extension with the team? So there's a lot of possibilities there. I mean, Chiarot chose to come to Montreal as a free agent. He was looking forward to playing here. So, I mean, it's possible they trade him for first round pick and whatever else they might get and then bring him back. With Jeff Petry, I think Hughes is going to trade him. I don't know if it's going to be before the deadline. It could be in the offseason. Hughes has said he'll trade him if it's a deal that makes sense for both teams. You know, Petry came out recently, and we were talking about Marty St. Louis before, and he said that, you know, he wouldn't mind staying to play for Marty St. Louis. He's the kind of coach that he would. So maybe he's not demanding a trade as much as he was before. But that contract and his age and moving forward, I still think Hughes is probably going to trade him. The guy that's really interesting is Kulak, who we were talking about earlier also. Another unrestricted free agent, but there's young kids coming up. You know, Caden Gooley could be playing for this team next year. Jordan Harris might be playing for this team next year. But you still have to have some veterans around them. You can't just throw 6 kids out on the ice as defense. So I wonder if Kulak, if there may be negotiations to try and sign him to maybe a 3-year deal and bring him back. He's younger than Petry. So there's a lot of interesting things moving forward. But Chiarot's the one slam dunk that will be traded. Petry, again, I think they're going to trade him, but it might not be at the trade deadline. It might not be until the offseason.
Yeah, and I really believe that Chiarot is going to be the one to go. And as we get down the countdown, so to speak, in the days ahead, you know, they're always going to push for getting the most they can from him. But if I was in Ben Chiarot's shoes, you know, I would look at, okay, I'm going to be moved. Let's find the most money, the most I can get in this situation. It's one in a career, lifetime dream to test the open market. He'd have to have something definitely in place before, you know, anything has happened. So I don't foresee Canadiens coming with a deal to re-sign him that would be as attractive, if he is as attractive as what we're hearing around the league. But you know, as we move forward to the deadline, I think there's going to be some obviously heated conversations on how much and, you know, what they can get for him. And then Petry, yes, you know, does he really want to stay here? There's no rush for the organization to move him. Still under contract. You know, let things play out unless something really nice came along that they could, you know, get maybe a little bit younger type of player. I'm sure there's conversations on all possible options for him, but right now there's nothing pressing for him. Kulak, again, not as critical a situation for him because, you know, maybe they'll let him play out the year and maybe he'll come back because it's not going to be a huge contract or burden to the organization from a salary standpoint. So, you know, there's a a lot of interesting pieces here that will be resolved. If they're not resolved in the next couple of weeks, I'm sure they'll take care of it before the summer gets along too far.
Yeah, and if you think about it, Ben Sherratt, he's turning 31. So this is like his time to make money. This will probably be his last big contract that he's going to get. He probably wants to look for a team that is competitive, that he could potentially maybe win a Stanley Cup or be close to contending to it. But I think, the way the Canadiens have played recently can't, fool people to think, okay, all the problems have been solved because they got a new coach in and he fixed everything. They still have a lot of missing holes in their lineup. And in order to get some players who are younger, who are able to fill that role, you got to trade those players like Ben Sherratt, Jeff Petry. There's no urgency, as we've said, because he can be traded at any point at the draft, but he's got to go. Brett Kulak would be the only one that I would say, you know what, keep him here. He's not going to cost you a lot. It'd be good to have one of these veteran defensemen, and I'm not sure how much you would get in return for him. That it might be more worth your while to keep him here on the lineup. He'll bring you more than whatever he can get through a trade.
Yeah, and if Hughes does have interest in maybe bringing Sherratt back, I'm sure he's had the conversation with him. Look, we're going to trade you, but remember, as when you become a free agent, we're interested. Like, we don't know how much it's going to be, but we'd like to be able to make you an offer, or at least tell you that we can afford to make you an offer, one way or the other. And with Petry, and talking about if they trade him, I don't think they can trade him just for draft picks. I think they need to bring back another defenseman who can play in the NHL, a younger defenseman, maybe with a year or two of experience in the league. Because again, you can't just throw all these young kids out there next year on the blue line. It'd be a disaster waiting to happen. So if they do trade Petry, I would think it would probably be involved maybe bringing back a 22, 23, 24-year-old defenseman with 1 or 2 years experience in the NHL, maybe a younger version of Jeff Petry, because they're going to have some kind of experience on the blue line next season.
And let's not forget Joel Edmondson too. I mean, this guy's got some years and some experience, and it's a classic example of a real good defenseman to have, in your group to help the young guys. And I'm hopeful that, I don't know what the most current situation is for him, but hopefully he's going to get himself straightened out so that he can come back and be part of the mix and, play again, because he's a huge part of that defensive core.
And if they can, Rick, find a younger version of Jeff Petry to play him beside Joel Edmondson, that's a pretty good guy to be playing beside if you're a guy with only 1 or 2 years experience in the NHL.
Yeah. The thing with Edmondson, we have to keep in mind, though, he's been struggling to get healthy all season. Mm-hmm. And even if he does get healthy this year, at some point, he's got to make sure to keep that up for next year. A lot of moving parts with regards to defensemen. I'd trade Sherratt. Petry is not a trade you have to do until the offseason if you still want to do it. Kulak, I understand where you're coming from with trying to keep veterans around, but I think if someone's willing to throw out a second or a decent haul for Brett Kulak, I think you have to make that move. And with the Canadiens supposedly wanting to be aggressive in free agency, even if it doesn't necessarily result in a big fish coming over on defense like a Chris Letang coming over or someone else, you can still fill out that defense with other pieces as well. Even a guy like Chris Weidman could probably just go for nothing too.
The thing too is this team has been so jinxed with injuries this year. The longer they wait to trade Sherratt, the more you're going, oh, boy, I hope he doesn't get hurt. And you're just throwing away a first-round draft pick if he gets hurt. So, I mean, Ken Hughes has spoken about it. He has that in the back of his mind. But this team has been just totally jinxed this season with injuries. And you'd hate to see something happen to Sherratt before the trade deadline.
We were talking about all these trades and injuries. We haven't even gotten to the $10.5 million conundrum, which is Carey Price, who, I think a lot of us are rooting to see him be healthy. And hey, if he's able to make an appearance later on this season, that would be a great story to see. That being said, with what the Montreal Canadiens are trying to do, is he someone that fits in their plans? Is he someone that should still be the starter for this team next year if he's still healthy? Or should the Montreal Canadiens buy him out? Can the Canadiens even do that? It's probably going to be a bit of a struggle to try to offload that contract to anyone via trade, but I mean, come on. Like, even if you say you're going to retain 50% salary, a guy with the injury history that he has, it's not going to be easy to do. But is buying out the only way to get out of this contract, if that's what the Canadiens want to do? Rick, this is a really weird situation. We could have a whole conversation about this. How do you see this playing out? And I can understand this is a very difficult question. We're going to get into some very nitty-gritty things with Carey Price.
Well, I think the first step in this whole Carey Price saga is, can this guy get healthy enough to play? There's been so much speculation on his injury, on whether or not it's a career ending, whether or not he wants to still be a part of the Montreal Canadiens, even though he says he does. He's going to be 35 years old. Does he want to go to a team that maybe has a chance to play if he can play? But I think the bottom line of this whole thing is, okay, he's got to play. He's got to see whether or not he's able to stand up to to playing his position without hurting himself again. And then they'd have to seriously look at, okay, is anybody interested? Can we make some kind of deal that would accommodate him? And as far as the salary goes, that's another that's another problem area. So a lot of questionables here as far as what do you do with him, and does he want to be part? But the root of all of it is health and well-being, and whether or not he's able to play that will allow him to or allow the organization to make clearer and better decisions on what they do with him. And if he is hurt to the point where he can't play anymore, that will play out, I think, sooner than later.
It's too bad that Pierre Gauthier isn't still a GM in this league, because he would have been a perfect person to trick into somehow acquiring Carey Price from this team.
Pierre Gauthier, why him?
Because he always kind of was that one that made the dumb moves that then the Canadiens were stuck with, and all the salary cap, So that's why
that is a flash from the past. Well done.
But yeah, it's a very tricky situation, because we don't know where Carey Price stands when it comes to his health. Like, is he close at all? At this point, it doesn't seem like he's going to play at any point this season. And the fact that he keeps having these setbacks is super concerning. Now, he could just take some extra time over the offseason, come back next year and blow everyone away. But he is starting to get towards the end of his career. He's got a lot of money on his contract. It is not an easy one to move. And this is where Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon are going to have to earn their money, trying to figure out what to do if Carey Price cannot be that starting goaltender that he was when he signed this contract. So, I don't know. I don't know what you do with a goaltender like Carey Price right now.
I don't think Kent Hughes knows right now what he's going to do or what he can do. I mean, remember when Stefan Wake got fired last season? Afterwards, he spoke about just how broken down Carey Price was. He said he's got a back issue, he's got hip issues, he's got knee issues. He said he can't really play more than 2 games in a row anymore. He needs to be spotted and given rest. When he went for the knee surgery, it was minor knee surgery. It was supposed to be 8 weeks. Well, it's 8 months now. And so it's just very bizarre for what the very minor knee surgery, a meniscus, that it's dragging on and on and on and on. Did they botch something in the surgery? Is it just a case of his knee is so battered from, he's had knee issues in the past that his knee just can't recover? As I said, there's back, there's hip. The hip issue was spoken about last season. It didn't need surgery, but there was a hip issue there too. He's not getting any younger. If Kent Hughes could trade him, I'm sure he will. But even eating half his contract, I don't know how many teams out there would pay $5 million for what is basically a broken down goalie right now. He was on the ice this week. I saw some video, but he looked very gingerly moving across the crease. He looked nowhere close to returning. I can't imagine him. At this point, it doesn't make much sense to have him play this season. Maybe a full off season of conditioning. Maybe he comes back next season. He's ready to go and they keep him. I think if he's healthy and ready to play next season, I think he plays here, because I don't think you can trade him until he shows that he can be Carey Price again and plays somewhat close to what he was in the playoffs last season. But at this point, for everything Kent Hughes wants to do moving forward, it's a big elephant in the room. And is a buyout a possibility? Maybe, but I don't know if it would happen this offseason. I think it would be a case of seeing if you can come back and play next season and trying to move him next season if you can. But it's a most difficult part, I think, of Kent Hughes moving forward is that. And also, don't forget Shea Weber on long-term injured reserve too. You got to figure out something to do with him too. Is he coming back? Is it a case of both of them end up on long-term injured reserve? Who knows? But I think right now anything is possible, including maybe a buyout if they have to work it that way. But until he gets healthy, it's hard to know what's going to happen, or it shows that he can be healthy. It's hard to know what's going to happen.
I'll say this with a buyout for Carey Price. While you were talking, I went on Cap Friendly just to buy out his contract, just to see the Canadiens for next season. Let's say they do it for this year, they would essentially save just under 420,000. Like his cap hit would still be over 10 mil if he was bought out. And as it would progressively get to the end of 2030, it would then go down to about $583,333, which, I mean, that's like how many years down the road. But if you're looking to buy him out now, you're basically saying, all right, we're not doing anything with $10 million on our cap in a flat cap world, which could go up by maybe $1 million next year. Buying out Carey Price, as far as I'm concerned, unless you guys have other math that I haven't seen, is not an option for Kent Hughes, especially if they want to go about the offseason the way that they do. You have to ultimately see if he's healthy enough to play. Maybe if he's able to play before the end of the year, you let him get in a game or two. Or just find a way to say, you know what, let him rest for the rest of the year, and then just try to see if he can come back next year. At this point, buying him out right now doesn't make a lot of fiscal sense. You have to find a way to offload that contract. But again, who's going to want a goalie with the injury problems that he has, unless the Canadiens themselves are sweetening it? Now, maybe Arizona might want that contract. Who knows? But it's a bit of a tricky situation. Very tricky. I'm not sure. Thank God I'm not a GM, because if I was a GM,
even if the Habs eat half the contract, I don't know what appetite there. I mean, $5 million is still quite a lot for a goalie in the NHL today, and 34 years old, and the injury history. And again, I think the biggest red flag up there is that how does a 8-week recovery from a knee surgery become 8 months?
I still can't believe it's 8 months.
Yeah.
Which brings to mind a question on my part is it just a knee injury? I mean, is there more to it than what we're actually,
had a hip issue as well.
How serious is that? We don't hear too much about that, other than, he's back on the ice. Is there some stuff there, degenerative stuff, that is really holding him back, that's not going to get better with time? And they've got some serious issues to address here, as far as, timing of everything, and whether or not they can move this process forward, and thinking that over the course of the summer that he's going to get better, when really at 35 years old, he might be getting worse. And then they're going to really have to do some serious number crunching to do the math to figure out what's the best way to handle this big contract.
Yeah, I agree with Rick that it has to be more to it. Like, I don't believe it's a botched surgery, because the surgeon he saw in New York is one of the best surgeons in the world. Yes, doctors are human and they make mistakes, but I don't think it's anything like that. I think there's something more to it, that it's not just the knee, it's not just recovery from the surgery, that it could be some other injuries that have bothered him throughout his career that are setting him back as well.
Well, the first 3 times he went back on the ice, he got shut down afterwards and taken off. And it wouldn't be surprising if they announced this week that he shut down again. And he, as I said, from watching the video on the other day, I mean, he's still moving very gingerly. It looks like a guy 8 weeks after the surgery, not 8 months after the surgery. So
do you think this week, I mean, maybe not to put words in your mouth or anything, but in terms of, but that would be interesting enough. But I mean, considering how many months have gone for the Montreal Canadiens, nothing really surprises us anymore. But if the Canadiens were to say this, like at any recent point, that it'd be done for Carey Price, like, obviously.
Well, if they pull him off the ice again, if there's the swelling or whatever happens again, then he's done for the season. I mean, at this point, right? It's just over a month left. So if the knee flares up again now, and they say that he's not skating again, I think at that point, then they just say he's not going to play this season, and we're going to hope over the off season he can recover and be ready to go next year.
Yeah. Again, thank God we're not GMs. This is a very difficult situation to maneuver through if you are Kent Hughes and the Montreal Canadiens. That's going to do it for this week's edition of Hockey Inside Out. Stay vigilant for our bonus episodes. You mentioned Shea Weber. Maybe he's worth one of those. So be out on the lookout for that over the next few days. Subscribe to the Hockey Inside Out show on YouTube. Subscribe to the Hockey Inside Out newsletter. You can go to montrealgazette.com/newsletters for that. And of course, you can visit hockeyinsideout.com for full episodes and other fun stuff from some of the other writers at the website. We'll talk next week.